So I think that we are live on Facebook. I can't see it, but I think we are. I told everybody that this was going to be our last Facebook Live impromptu. However, my awesome friend Trey is working and he was unable to pull up today. And he made me promise that I will do one more live next week so he can speak for the men on education. But today I had the privilege of bringing in 4 awesome women that I want to introduce to everybody briefly. And then I'm hoping that I could shut up and then like watch them pull up and just have a real conversation about education from the parent standpoint, because they're all parents. Some of them are educators, consultants in school, researchers, all that. But I have Shantae, I have Jen, I have Denise, and I have Jackie. All dope in their own right. And I just wanted to bring all of you women into this conversation because I've spoken to you all at some point or another. And let's talk about education. And I just have one disclaimer when we talk. Can we please not miss special education? Let's talk equity. Let's talk St. Louis City, St. Louis County. Let's talk charter schools, public schools. And let's talk about the state of education and what we as parents need to shift this thing. Whoever want to bust this thing open and start, I'll pitch it to that person first.
I'll start off. My core issue right now is that SPED parents with students who have special needs are overwhelmed right now. All parents are overwhelmed, but for those of us with kids with special needs, most of us are single on the lower income side. So we are educating. Some of us can't work because of the special needs of our child. So we're stuck at home. We don't have the income that we need or should be getting. We have to be the therapists. We have to be the teachers. We have to be the parent. We have to, in my case, I have to be the playmate because I only have one child. And it is exhausting. And there is nowhere to turn for any help. I'm lucky that I do get to stay with him and I can help him as much as I can, but I'm very fortunate because there are so many that can't. And these kids are falling through ginormous cracks. And I feel like we're just watching them fall and sending out hopes and thoughts and prayers to them and their parents, but there's nothing there. And I think as a society, we have to do something for those parents and for those kids who are just in a free fall.
I think one thing, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think that's like the common thread is this is shit, this is hard. And my hope was that instead of maintaining the status quo, we would be able to redesign systems and structures. But and I think this comes back as myself as like an educator or myself as a parent. We're constantly climbing steep learning curves. Like, how do I get my kid to sit on the toilet? How do I like master, this transition? How do I get them to eat something? How do I get them to just put on clothes? Like, clearly I have little people. And so I'm like, okay, I figured out how to do hard things before. And as someone who knows how to differentiate and scaffold for all the different needs, like that is what we're uniquely positioned. I think the problem that has always faced education and faced what feels insurmountable is that it feels so large. And I'm really trying to think through what can I do in my specific niche or my specific community to push and make change. But yeah, I feel you on that front. Is like, how can we actually redesign systems when these systems were designed for a reason to bring some people power and then like benefit others. Anyways, Shantae, I think you were gonna jump in.
I was just thinking about the longevity of the systems that you were mentioning. I mean, like trying to implement a change in something that has happened for so long, it's like pulling teeth. But I love the ideals of all the women involved, because if we don't come up with something, and we're majority of the time, I'm not gonna, disclaim men, but majority of the time, we are the ones that are handling these issues. And pretty much we're gonna have to lay the foundation of trying to come up with something new to handle it. But it's hard. And I agree on that point. And where we start is definitely what's gonna be the biggest challenge. So that's all I have to say about that.
Jen, what were you thinking about that? Anything you want to add?
So I agree with the need to work on changing systems and structures, and each of us brings to the table our own experiences or in our own areas of expertise. And fortunately, as well as unfortunately, in terms of special education, federal law allows for parental involvement. It encourages the involvement of families. The problem is, and I think that this is where intentionality needs to come into play. Some families have more resources, and because of that, they're able to speak up more loudly than other families. So no matter what we do, when we're at the table brainstorming and trying to transform education, we need to think about who's not there. And from what I've seen, a lot of times it is Black and brown parents who aren't there when it's white people taking the lead. And even when Black and brown parents are there, I've seen a lot of times the needs of families involved in the special education system being overlooked. And that's going to impede progress. So those are my thoughts.
I would agree with all of you. So when I think about this and we look at all the movers and shakers, and I even think about the conversation we was just having, Jackie, before all the other ladies came in, how do we really give parents a place at the table? Like, I have a big mouth, Shantae, so I want it to be less of me, like, you new to the table, like, no, don't nobody know you. Like it's important that parents are valued. It is important that parents are heard. And then it's important that we make sure that parents understand the messages that are being conveyed. Like, do parents really even understand what this thing called equity is? This thing called equality and the difference? Do parents even understand all the pieces of an IEP and compensatory services and how their children may be falling through the gap? Like, we assume that when someone tells us that this is done, this is done, this is done, the quarterly things and marked and checked, and our kids are getting all of these great services. But on the back end, we find out that's not all what it's supposed to be. So we have these conversations, Jackie, and I'll pitch it to Shantae, but are we really making sure the people that we are serving understand? And do we really understand them? Because if we did, I would say we wouldn't be in this situation. Shantae?
I would agree. And I will add a little bit to, I believe, what Jen was saying about the representation. A lot of times, and I find this from my childhood, parents are just trying to make it, like they don't have time for these meetings. They trying to make sure the bills are paid. I'm like, with my parents, I'm pretty sure I can count on my hand how many times maybe my mom, especially in high school, came to a parent teacher conference. As long as I was passing and I was doing what I needed to do at school, she assumed that everything was going as it should, but the teachers weren't engaging. The counselors aren't really giving me the feedback I need in order to advance myself. No one's talking about college for real. And if they are, they're not giving you the tools to fill out financial aid, to apply at the schools, to just have a general understanding of what your next step should be. And then that is like, after that, that's life. You know, like that's all the help you're really going to get unless you join a program somewhere. And who knows where they are. I mean, they're not advertising them anywhere. That's why I just value we're having these conversations and we're engaging the way we are, because we obviously have to come up with an answer somewhere in within this gap.
So do you feel as a parent that you get all of the support that you need? You said your baby 10, like, was the gap held for you over these 10 years, or do you feel like you've been scraping to try to figure out, where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? How do I keep him in position so he's climbing the ladder? Like, I know for me, it has been like fighting tooth and nail for everything. I don't want to speak for Denise and Jen, but I think they would say the same thing. And when we get to talking about equity, Jackie, I hope you listening, like, I really need people to include us, parents, but then please add special education. Please add this population. Do you feel, Shantae, as a parent, that you've been able to just climb this thing seamlessly, or has it just been like boggling to you like it has been for me?
Definitely not seamless. And I even feel for the parents in different districts, because I'm in Francis Howell, and a lot of the districts in the North County, they don't even have the access or resources that they have in the district that I'm in, and I still don't feel like they're really leveling him up, even setting him up for greatness, period. They focus a lot on the behavioral things, and honestly, when he started school, he had basic kindergarten knowledge. He'd been in preschool since he was 2, so he knew all colors, ABCs, numbers. But I'm noticing as he's in school, maybe they don't have that one-on-one. That's what I'm thinking, because like I was speaking on the class sizes, and then when a test or something comes along and they're like, oh, he's not doing as well, and I'm thinking like, why? Because I sent him to you prepared. You know, this, I don't have the answer for it, but that's why I'm here. I'm just really trying to figure it out, because we have to do something, and I'm not letting him fall through the cracks. Like, I am working with him. I'm not just sending him to school like I expect you to do everything. When he comes home, we're doing spelling words. We're working on multiplication. He like, ugh. I make him write in a journal every day. Like, I'm signing him up for Zoo Night Keeper, where they have them reading stories and they have to fill out and write like little short paragraphs or essays. That's not his favorite thing, but like, if I don't do this, you won't be prepared. And what scares me is that he's in a good district. Like, this is not a bad school. This is not bad teachers. These teachers are great. You know what I'm saying? These principals are great. Like, when I come up, they engage me. I try to make it to every open house I try to go to, because I want them to know, like, he's not falling on my watch. I'm not letting it happen. So you have an idea of what his mother looks like, who she is. His second grade teacher, he had a little problem in the first grade. I didn't really get to connect with that teacher as much. She wasn't really kind of keeping me in the loop of what his behavior was, what he had behavioral wise going on at school. He was engaging more with the students, and he's the only child. Like, I have the only child for real in my family. You know, my sister, she doesn't have kids. It's only me and her. We have a very small knit family. When he goes to school, his friends are his life. Like, I gotta go to school with my friends. You know, I'm like, learn. But he wants to be with his friends. And I'm trying to tell this to the teacher, but in second grade, I think I really had a better handle of it. She was a little stricter, you know, she wasn't really kind of letting him get away with the passive behavior. And by the end of the school year, he didn't really like it. But by the end of the school year, he was like, oh, I like Mrs. So-and-so, you know, she's nice. And I'm like, yeah, because me and her stayed on the same page. I let her know, I gave her all my information. I told her she could call me at work, whatever she wants to do. You know what I'm saying? Because we're going to get him there and we're going to make sure that he's getting what he needs, period. I'm not taking no for an answer. So to hear about different districts and schools that just don't have that, I mean, they don't even have the money to be able to put into their students, you know, like a better district will be able to, and it's not even like halfway there. I mean, like the levels are so low, it's just saddening and kind of depressing.
Ladies, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would love to add to that because I come from a very different district. We're in Kirkwood. So one would think that we are we would have lots of resources, and they do, unless you have a kid with special needs. Because here in St. Louis County, we have this thing called special school district. And so in St. Louis County, all the public schools just kind of point to SSD and say, this is your job. You figure it out, you deal with it. My son has had an IEP since he was 3.5. We've been pushed out of schools. We've had to claw our way back. He's been in a horrible school, clawed our way back again, and now he's at a special school district school. I never foresaw this fight. I grew up in Kirkwood. My parents grew up in Kirkwood. I thought he will get everything he needs here. That's not how it is in Kirkwood. And I would venture to guess that in other affluent neighborhoods, that isn't happening either. So I fought for him. I fought every moment of every day. I was at all the meetings. We had IEP meetings sometimes every 2 weeks because that's what the school was wanting. So everybody knew my face. Everybody knew that I was going to be in there fighting, even though I'm saying to them, let's work together. Please, let's work together. But it was never together. It was always an us against you fight. And I can't imagine that if my son with his needs had a different skin color and we lived in a much different neighborhood, how much differently he would be treated. He did go to a school called Great Circle, which it was predominantly African American, and it was for kids with behavioral problems. And it's a step before juvenile detention. And the way the kids were treated there, it was eye-opening for me, because these kids are just, it's like everything there is hopeless. So I did have a window into what school must be like for these kids. And after seeing that, it gave me a passion for other parents who might not have the resources that I have, who need help getting their kids out of places like that, keeping their kids out of places like that, and being in a good school, giving them the services they need so that they can pursue a higher education, become productive members of society in whatever means they can. To think that this is probably too much information to put out to the world, but I'm going to anyway. So a little vulnerability, being physically restrained to the point of bruises, being put into a locked room. We wouldn't think that was something that's happening in our St. Louis County communities, but it is. And like I said, if my son was Black, brown, anything other than a Caucasian, how much differently that would have been. If he didn't have a mother who went to school and said, my son has fingertip bruises on his thighs, explain this to me. And if he didn't have that kind of parent, what would have happened? And to me, those kids with those kinds of needs have got to have a group of people that are going to say, but our kids too. You guys are coming up with all of these great programs and talking about education, but you don't want to talk about special education. And what's going on in St. Charles County, I got to say, outside of SSD, I don't know that much. St. Louis Public Schools, I hear it's a mess. I've never personally touched it, so I can't really say. All I know is that it's a hot mess. So that's my perspective. And
can I ask, like, why? So I can only speak to my own experience with like teaching kids and being an advocate with parents, and I taught in Anacostia. And so a lot of the families that were in these SPED meetings were like, it was really hard for them to get there in the first place. And it was really hard for me to fight to have these meetings. It took so much time. Like one student, I remember I was fighting from him from like when he was held back a couple years. It took 3 years for us to even get a meeting. And like, that's the kind of shit that we were dealing with. But why do you think it's so messy when it comes to special education? I feel like it's designed that way. Like all of these laws are designed to make it harder for teachers, for parents, even sometimes for schools. I know like coordinators who feel like they're bogged down by all this paperwork, which is necessary, like the documentation in some way. But I mean, if you had to pinpoint it to like what it was so messy and like how we could change it with like magic, what would that look like?
Wow, that's such an interesting question. I'm not sure there is one thing. I would say people who are making the laws have a special ed child and know what it's like, and talk to some special ed teachers and say, you know what, some of this stuff we don't need. We have these little pieces of laws that don't make sense. And you know what? The federal law should match the state law, should match the school policies, should match what happens in classrooms. All of that should match, and it should be everywhere. It shouldn't be different. And Missouri law should not be able to override state law. DESE shouldn't be able to say, oh, we're going to write this specifically for us, and this is what everybody's going to have to do, but it doesn't match federal law. That is ridiculous. So that would be the number one thing, I think, is all of that stuff has to make sense. And then I think you can't ignite passion in parents. I think special ed parents just get so overwhelmed in making it minute to minute every day. But I think if you say to them, there's a resource that can help you, and someone can spend what they would have to research if they had the time for hours to do, somebody can explain it to them in 20 minutes. I think that's what you do. And hey, here's an email with exactly what you need to do. Copy, paste it, send it to the school, boom, done. I think if you break things down into little chunks, then you get, I think, the parents more invested, in my opinion.
I know Jen has something to say, but I'm gonna throw a word at you that you said to me, Jackie. If we would take away the silos, like if we would remove the silos, and then if we would invest and invite parents into that space, like allow us into that space, teach us, commune with us, quit talking at us, talk to us. This is new to us. We birthed the child. We didn't know we were birthing a disability child. So teach us what you went to school and got educated for, and don't make me feel like you make me feel when I come ask you for help. And I don't even have to add nothing else to it, because you know what I'm talking about. Include us in your circle. Include us! Exclamation point. And
what's
they
an
refuse to do it.
So what's the, sometimes I struggle when we speak like macro. Well, let's talk about like and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but like an example where you have felt, and Jen, I know you've experienced this, so maybe you'll jump in, where you have felt like you had to claw or fight at the table to get your voice heard. Well, so I view myself as a connector and a gatekeeper. But I don't have a child right now who has special needs. How can I be an advocate and an accomplice in the places that I have positionality and power? This could go not just with special needs. This could go with, ability. This could go with sexuality. This could go with racial identity. I mean, this is translatable to all things.
I'd like to jump in here. So first, I would like to echo my agreement with what all of you women have been saying. There are a lot of issues in the way the special education system is being implemented. It allows for parental involvement, but a lot of parents, particularly parents of kids with these IEPs, are just trying to make it through the day. And for example, there's a monthly meeting at SSD called a Parents Advisory Council. And it's supposed to have at least one representative coming from each one of the areas in the county. And as of the end of the 2019 school year, it only encompassed about, there was very little representation from the North County schools. And the people who were able to participate in these meetings represented, I think, something like 63% of children who were receiving services from SSD. And the majority of those children who did not have representation on this monthly committee were children from the North County area. And that's not right. That is hugely problematic. These meetings meet once a month. They meet in the evenings. There's no childcare. Public transportation is minimal. And so my question is, how on earth are they expecting people who, for whatever reason have a hard time making it there every month? That's not right to leave kids without a voice like that. That's not right. So in terms of an example that I experienced where I had to claw my way through a situation, we used to go to the Kirkwood schools as well. And one thing that we encountered was just people flagrantly not following the rules. I mean, there are, education is a highly regulated endeavor. And I saw examples of administrators not even knowing what the rules applicable to them were. How do you function? How do you function at a job where you're not playing by the rules you're supposed to be playing by? I don't get it. This is a system that seems not to be functioning well without parents really, really pushing and driving it. And unfortunately, those parents who for whatever reason don't have the same opportunities to push and advocate, theirs are the children who are being left behind. And that's not right.
If I can add, and then I really want you to speak, Jackie, on this, like after we do all those things that Jen just said, then we will be blackballed, because if we don't have the ability to stand and say we call out these schools and these executors and principals, like then you get boxed in and you get kept out of the loop. your children don't get access from resources, and then you are flagged. And that's not okay for trying to stand up for what you know is the right thing. These principals and these people should know how to service our children. And then when we call them out on what they don't know, it ricochets and come back at us. And that is why you have the work that we are now beginning to do behind the scenes. And I'm begging people, like, as you're mobilizing and doing all of this work and bringing these people together, I'm gonna keep asking, who are you talking to? Because the parents that are directly affected, I promise you, you ain't talking to us. I promise. What you got, Jackie Gold?
Well, what do I have? I mean, I don't know if I'm those parents yet. I feel like in some ways I am, based on my whiteness and based on my positionality. In some ways, I feel like I'm learning a lot because y'all have been in systems and navigating structures that I have been on the other side of as a teacher, as a recruiter of teachers and talent. And I haven't actually been in the process well, I have to an extent this year where I was advocating for my kid to go in person because she was not thriving, which that's a whole, I mean, I can go there, but like, I feel like I struggle with that balance because for me to advocate for her individual needs, it had a ripple effect on the collective. And ultimately, the school is able to redesign a structure in alignment with the teachers that would enable all the kids that wanted to show up at school to show up. But she goes to a small charter school, and when they reach a certain threshold with staff outages based on, having to follow the contract tracing, they're going to have to shut down. So I think like that's the other factor. So in my first case where I was faced with how do I advocate for my kid and how do I advocate for the collective, I don't know, I think I failed. But my best friend, who's also a school leader, has pushed me a lot on this thinking, and I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. As parents, as mothers, as caregivers, we are inherently going to protect our child, and we are going to fiercely advocate for what they need. And that's just something that we're going to do. So is there a way where we can still support each other to advocate for what they need when we think about equity, but we are also advocating for Paul and Nate and for our other kids that we have a relationship with in community? And so that is, and I'm like, that is a different way to think about it. And I'm wanting to try and do more of that by having real relationships with people that are at my kid's school, although that's been tremendously hard considering that we don't see anyone and we can't go in the building. So like, that's a whole other issue. But things like this, like you bringing people together that like we all live in different parts and we all have had different experiences, but we all have similarities too, in which we're trying to fight for our kids and all kids. I don't know if I answered your question though.
You did. I think
Okay.
it takes a collective, and I think whoever that mentor friend is like, it requires a shift, like a mindset shift. Although I get to care about Paul, I have to remember Jackie's daughter, Shantae's son, Denise's son, Jen's son, and all the other sons and daughters, like they matter. And when we're talking about equity, equality, I cannot just think about your small charter school. Sorry, you got to think about every school, all of them in the paradigm. If we're going to have equity for all, we cannot address equity in education and exclude. And I'm gonna say this for anyone who's talking about education, you cannot talk education and exclude special education. Find your data. Find your research. I don't care where you got to get it from. It's there. There's no conversation you can have about any equity without talking about these children, because we have failed them since the foundation of the educational system. No shade. But yes, you did answer my question.
I try.
Yeah, I get a little hype, y'all. Like
I love it.
When we talking about this, I feel like
It's
we get
personal.
in our silo. Yeah, we get in our silos and we only care about the agenda we are pushing. The reason why it's hard for people to swallow Carmen is because I'm gonna put it all out there because it all matters. Every last bit of it. Continue the conversation. I think Miss Julia is at my door. Come on, y'all, keep going.
Okay, so going to what Jackie just said. So here's the way I see something happening. So I am an IEP coach. I want to connect with parents and help them advocate in an effective, collaborative way with the schools. So we do that with parent A, and we get a good evidence-based, best for that student's unique needs IEP. Okay, we got that one down. So then we get another one, and we get another one at these schools. Well, then you're making so many consistent changes. Then you can say, okay, well, maybe this is a policy that needs to be changed or procedure at that school that needs to be changed. So by getting more parents actively involved and getting better IEPs for their kids, I see that we can make it's little steps and it's little drops in the bucket, but if you get enough drops in the bucket, you've got a half full bucket and then you have a full bucket. And if we can make those trickle up happen and get some trickle down policies changed, maybe we can kind of keep some of that from happening. So I highly recommend, even if it's not IEP Help STL, even if it's some other advocate, even if it's your friend, to bring somebody else in, because you cannot fight by yourself. I have sat in an IEP meeting by myself. I have also built a team. At my biggest IEP meeting, I had 24 people at that IEP meeting. We had to have I requested a facilitator from DESE because things were getting so heated at these meetings. We had people talking over people. Somebody from SSD wouldn't let me talk as the parent of my son. It was just ugly. And everybody lost sight of what we were doing, and that a kid's need for a free, appropriate public education in a least restrictive environment, that has to come first. And that means not suspending kids. We've been suspended a lot. And show me a single parent that can hold a job when you are called to school 70 times in a year. It's just not possible. And the school knew that. The school, I think I was on their speed dial. They were certainly on mine. And we have to find a way to have better IEPs so that we can change policy and policy and policy. And here's another thing I want to say. The school districts that are trying to say that they are no longer suspending kids. Here's the thing. They are no longer suspending kids unless they break a policy. The policy that says, if you break this policy, we'll still suspend you. So they're saying, oh, we aren't going to suspend people anymore. We aren't going to suspend kindergarten through 6th grade. I can tell you for a fact, at Kirkwood School District, they still did. And we're talking about the first time he was suspended was in pre-K. He was suspended for a week when he was in preschool. He was suspended in 1st grade, in 2nd grade. He was suspended last school year. Suspensions, and again, my son is white. So
I'll jump in real quick and then I want you to finish what you were saying. I'm glad you said my son is white. When we get to talking about special needs kids, my name Carmen, I'm Black. When you get to talking about special needs kids, Black, white, brown, I don't care what color you are, they all get treated like black and brown kids, I'ma say it, they suspend them, they treat us like trash. And that is why when we meet each other as special education parents, we stick to each other and hold each other close because we know what it feels like. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure y'all understand the lens she's speaking from because I feel it in my bones too.
Right. I see, when it comes to SPED, I see disability first and then anything else after that, because we are just pushed to the side, and I'm just in awe. In some school districts, they say they handle, we embrace kids with special needs, with disabilities. Disability is only ability. Yeah, if you have a really cute child with a disability you can take a picture of and put on a flyer, that's the disability that they work with. Disability, when you have a kid who cannot control their emotions, is totally different, completely different. And that's what they need to work on. We got to have some positive behavior supports. And that doesn't affect just kids with special needs. That affects kids like Shantae's kid who don't have special needs, but maybe have some emotional or social emotional behavioral issues. With positive behavior intervention supports, we can try and stop. No, not we. They can try and stop those behaviors before they start. That is something that, instead of saying that they do it, that they've gone through these programs, actually show us that you are. Show us that that's what your not your policies are, but your procedures. Don't show me a piece of paper. Show me how you deal with my kid.
Just to piggyback off of that a little bit, Denise, I totally agree with you because I mean, Sean is not special needs, but I have issues. If my son is not learning more than what I think that he should be, what I'm teaching him, then I have an issue. So we have the parent teacher conference, and I go in and I want the principal there. I wanted his counselor there. His teacher was there. And they're like, his behavior, glad that you brought that up. His behavior is a little bit disruptive in class, and he's doing this and he's doing that, and the principal says she thinks he has anxiety because when he gets upset he's twisting his hair or something like that. And I'm just looking at her like, I said, okay, all right, but what I'm saying is I would like him to learn. I need him to learn because he needs to get to the next grade. He's not a bad kid. I know this. I know bad children. You know what I'm saying? I know kids that just are malicious and they're really trying to, just do stuff. I've seen it, but the thing about it is there might be an attention thing there. You know what I'm saying? As far as from other children, from his peers. And I need you to take that time to address that. I talked with the principal, the counselor separately. She says, I don't see what they see. I don't see what they see in him because I noticed that if you give him the positive feedback that he needs, he goes above and beyond to try to appease you. I say, yeah, that's pretty much him. You know what I'm saying? If you give him what he needs, he's going to make sure that he's making you happy. He's a people pleaser type of little guy. You know what I'm saying? That's just who he is. And I know that. And I'm like, well, I'm his mom. Because they kept trying to tell me about his behavior. I said, I'm his mom. And the principal was like, yeah, you're going to be his mom. Yes, I am his mom. And what I'm saying is he needs to be educated. I need you to find a way to try to reach him. And I can only imagine the dismissal of someone that has special needs because he doesn't. But if they did, they just don't want to. It feels like, I'm not going to say they don't want to because I don't know personally, but it feels like to the parent that you don't want to because you're not taking that extra mile to just connect. Just take that little time to connect with him instead of having all the little girls around you in class and y'all playing a little dressed up or whatever y'all doing over there. And then when the boys get rowdy, you want to say, oh, the boys are being so bad. Pay attention to them as well. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just that little bit of attention that would send them over the edge of greatness and excellence. It doesn't take that much. I remember when I was in 3rd and 4th grade, my teacher giving me just a little bit of praise, just a little praise, and I will go above and beyond. You know, that's what these children need, and you have to have their back in that. Period. And sometimes I feel like they're not giving them that support, and I can only but imagine if your child is special needs and they can't really voice what is going on.
I've got to jump on something that Shantae just said, and that is the misidentification and over-identification of kids with special needs, that they wanted to slap an anxiety label on your son instead of what's really the issue here. If we give him, if we take a few minutes to discuss what is really going on with him, we'll see that it's actually he just needs a little bit of encouragement. And with encouragement, oh wow, look, he can blossom. Same thing. Okay, trauma, especially our kids in Black and Brown communities, that's so often misidentified. Trauma-informed specialists need to be at school. They need to be the ones that are talking to these students, that are getting resources for the students, and not sending them down a path of special needs when it's not special needs. It's just, I don't want to say just trauma, because trauma is horrible and bad, but it's not a special needs, and we have to make sure that that is addressed appropriately, which it consistently isn't. And one thing I want to point out, if you guys want data on any of this, Miss Jen Coker is the data queen, and she has some amazing data on everything we've talked about. And on this specific point, kids who are misidentified as special needs but actually do have trauma, or kids that have been sent to prison eventually and have been never identified as having a special needs, whether it's ADHD or anxiety or autism or whatever, dyslexia, dysmorphia, I don't know, anything. But that's something, is the proper identification and the proper treatment and services for what kids need, not just special needs kids, but all kids. Have people in there that can really address what these kids need.
I want to say, like, thank you so much for your transparency, Shantae. Denise, like, that is why we need IEP consultants, coaches, whatever, that directly support parents. None exist. All of these systems out there directly work with schools, and even the organizations that are out there, they're so broad in the services that they provide, and it's all regulated under what Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education wants them to do. So it's really not geared to help us. I say all that to say, like, I remember meeting Jen, and I know how much it vexes her that our children are being misdiagnosed. Yes, I said our children are being misdiagnosed, because these children are traumatized. I know it because I know what trauma is, because I've suffered with it. But we don't get them the support, and instead we slap a label on them, stick them over there with them people, and they never get what they need in the gap. But what also is very important, Jackie, shot for you, like, organizations need to understand, again, the difference between trauma and disability, and hold a space for children that are traumatized, and also get educated on what is special needs. It is no longer okay to exclude parents from this conversation, and it is no longer okay to say that this is not an issue. We are mislabeling children. We are enlarging a population that doesn't need to be enlarged, and we are not zoning in my Denise voice, in what really matters and how to support these children. And that is because we are scared. We are scared because the ideal law is just supposed to make it all cookies and cream, and it doesn't. And it's time out for ignoring a parent like Jen that has been saying the same thing since she set foot in St. Louis about Black and brown children and special education children. And we know it's a fact because they even exclude us, these three parents that are on this call right now. We should not have to fight to tell y'all what y'all know. We just shouldn't.
One thing that I've found is you have to be the squeaky wheel. And I'm sure some of my son's teachers have grown weary of me, because I'll send, if it takes 3 emails a day, because that's the way my brain works, I'll send emails. And hey, here's what, especially during virtual learning, here's what's working, here's what's not. Because of his needs, I have to sit next to him the entire virtual learning day. I have to be the one that disciplines. I have to be the one that redirects. I have to do all that.
You know, you got a job though. I'm being real sarcastic here. How you work? How do you go to work?
I'll let you know when I figure that out. That's part of the problem. This teachers have joked with me about, hey, can you come back to school when we're back in school, because you do a great job. And I said, well, when's SSD going to pay me? Because I'm doing the complete job of a teacher and para here. So, but my point was that I have to have constant communication with the teachers. Here's what's working, here's what's not. And here's something, I can't remember who, I think Jackie was talking about this. So back in August, when we got our schedules, SSD had no time where these students got to communicate with each other. It was learning and nothing. What is it called? Oh my gosh. Oh my God, what's the word? Jen, do you know it?
Asynchronous.
Yes, asynchronous. The most hated word of 2020 in education. So it was either learning through Zoom or asynchronous. There was these kids had 2 minutes a day to talk to each other. So I said, no, this is not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay. I kept saying that to the teachers. I sent messages to SSD. That's a whole nother thing, but I talked to the principals about it. And finally I got them to add 1 Zoom a week that's 45 or 30 minutes long, where the kids can come into a Zoom and talk and play a game, whatever, but they get to interact peer on peer, because we're at an SSD school. So part of everything is learning how to, it's all social skills, learning how to be appropriate in appropriate situations. And that was something that I had to ask for and ask for and ask for and ask for. And finally I got it. And then when I told other parents, they're like, wow, that's a great idea. How can we get that in our classrooms? Again, this is all on an SSD school kind of thing. But that took a lot, but to me, it seems so simple. And it seems like that's something we should just be doing. Kids get to do it at recess and throughout the day, but we were telling them that they couldn't talk to each other. So I think it takes parents, you keep hammering away at the same thing, and you let yourself be a little annoying, because that's the only way. If you're that squeaky wheel, that's how you're going to get things to change.
I think the state of education is in crisis, but I think the shift needs to be us. I really want to see a community where parents are given all access. As I think about the conversation that I had with an awesome person about their project, like that has the potential to empower the people. And that's what matters. I really want to hear what you think, Jackie. Like, I've never brought you in this type of platform. Didn't prep you for this. How did it feel hearing just about what parents think about special education, in Shantae's sense, just like not really being heard, maybe attempt at a misdiagnosis? How do you feel just being blah, all that information being thrown at you? How do you feel about that? How do you process that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because the initial take is like, what is my role to play in conversations like this? Where are spaces that I can push or make space or ensure that this is a priority? Where can I reflect on the places where I have been an advocate or a barrier to parents that I supported when I was teaching mostly SPED students? And was that intentional, or was that I was overwhelmed as a teacher and didn't know what the hell I was doing? And that's not okay either, to Jen's point. And so I'm trying to find that balance of like acknowledging, well, one, holding space, because this isn't the first time I've heard these stories, and this is not going to be the last, unfortunately. But then two, what does action look like? Because you know me, you can't just be what you talk about. It's what do you do? And I actually think that's the most important thing, is more often than not, when someone says something, I tend to follow through and create a space or opportunity. And they might not always be life-changing, but I think that is one thing that I can commit to after hearing this, is like, when there is a space that I hold power or influence, I'm asking in a way that maybe someone might not be asking about special needs or parents that aren't at the table, or ensuring that we have a breakout group that focuses on SPED at like a Ford through Ferguson event that we're doing with Packet, things like that. So I don't mind. You can come at me anytime. I tell my friends all the time that are school leaders, I'm like, if you need to complain to a white person, feel free. I will be the white person that you're angry at because we are the worst parents that opportunity hoard and in your school. So no, I like it. I'm down for this. And I appreciated hearing different perspectives, because I'm mostly engrossed in the city, and I feel like this is enriching my perspective. I think I have to go do bedtime.
No, you do. Jen, close us
Love
out.
y'all.
I think Jackie's leaving. Close us out, Jen, with whatever words you got.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you, Jackie. So I just wanted to reiterate a couple of points that Jackie made, mostly the ones about the importance of people who have the power and influence to hold the space open to really listen to everybody's stories. It is important to remember that we need to hold the opportunity open for people to share what their experiences are. Each one of us has the power to either be an advocate or to be an impediment. And I would encourage everybody to make the choices that they need to make in order to be an advocate. So I just wanted to appreciate the opportunity to participate here this evening and to hear everybody's perspectives.
Well, I'm going to end the Facebook Live next week. I promise that is the last one. Trey will take the stage and talk, so we'll see him next week. Thank you, ladies, for holding this space. I'm going to disconnect this live, but y'all stay on here for a second.